I guess I should have trusted my instincts or listened to the old adage, never do business with friends or family. Would have saved me a whole lot of ball ache and months of nightmares. The kind that don't end when you wake up. Dark Margins presents The Package It Came In by Ian Hand. It was a red brick council house, unremarkable, 2 bedrooms and much like any other on the estate. It was built in 1920. I know, I saw the deeds when I took ownership of it after my parents died. One from cancer, the other of a heart attack, within 6 months of each other. Nobody knew the estate was there, tucked away on the outskirts of Brigstow. It wasn't on the way to anywhere, so you wouldn't just pass through. You had to make a point of going there. It was the first council estate in the country. An experiment, each house slightly different from the next, to see what worked best. Built to house soldiers returning from the First World War. Homes for heroes, they called them. But enough of the history lesson. This isn't a haunted house story, filled with the ghosts of former residents. I'm not sure what sort of story this is. Maybe a tale of the macabre, as Poe would have called it. I used to love his stuff. Not so much now. Not after what happened. Ironically, the number of the house was 13, unlucky for some, and so it turned out to be. My parents lived in the house for a good 10 years. They had downsized from the 3-bed Victorian terrace I had grown up in. The people who lived there before had bought the house from the council under the right to buy scheme. The only good thing Thatcher did for working class people, my dad said, but only to keep them sweet and stop them rioting. I lived there with them for a couple of years before I moved out. I was 17. Taking possession of the house, and as an only child, I had to decide what to do with it. There was no emotional attachment. It wasn't my childhood home. I've worked full-time since I was 18 and had kept myself financially buoyant, if not flush. So, at the grand old age of 26, I found myself the proud owner of a 1-bedroom flat and a 2-bedroom semi. I've got a good financial head on my shoulders and had no need for a spare bedroom. I made the decision to rent the house out. An extra income would come in handy. I suppose this is where the story starts. I let the house to a friend of mine, a guy called Toad. His real name was Gareth, but nobody called him that. I've got no idea where the nickname came from. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a term of endearment, but it stuck. It stuck so well, people still called him Toad as an adult. I don't think many people knew his real name. He didn't seem to mind. I'd known him since I was at school. He was a good friend back then. He had a cool sense of humor, weird and sailing on out there at times, but funny if you know what I mean. We used to get stoned together on the way home from school, and once did magic mushrooms before going on a school trip, if you'll excuse the pun. They took us to a modern art exhibition. I have to say, that stuff made a lot more sense when I was tripping my nuts off. Of course, we got busted. The headmaster suspended us for a week, but he thought we'd been smoking weed. We both knew better than to put him right on the subject. We would have been expelled for sure if he knew what we'd really taken. My mum lost her shit. Never heard the end of it until the day she died. I grew out of the drug scene after leaving school, but heard Toad carried on, getting into acid, ecstasy, and ket. I hadn't spoken to Toad for a few years when I got a call from him, totally out of the blue. He said he'd heard I had a place to rent, and he was interested. He was working as an office admin, full-time, so he had a fair income. And, like me, no wife or girlfriend or kids. His outgoings were minimal. He didn't sound like his old self, though. The spark seemed to have gone out of him. Either the years of taking drugs or life in general knocking the crap out of him. I don't know, but I guess I should have trusted my instincts or listened to the old adage, never do business with friends or family. One or the other. Would have saved me a whole lot of ball ache and months of nightmares. The kind that don't end when you wake up. It's easy to look back and beat yourself up over stuff you should have done, or, in this case, something you shouldn't have done. A few days later, I met up with him for a coffee and to discuss the tenancy. He told me he'd had a couple of relationships, but they hadn't worked out, and he had resigned himself to the single life. I asked him why he wanted a 2-bedroom house, and he said he had a lot of stuff to store. As it was getting near lunchtime, he ordered a burger and fries along with a coffee. I noticed he lined everything up on the tray: the burger, the fries, and the coffee. He took the fries out 6 at a time, laid them next to each other, like a picket fence, and then ate them one at a time, from right to left. The burger came in a cardboard box. After he finished, he folded the box and slipped it into his jacket pocket. I asked him if he was one of those obsessive recyclers. He said, "Something like that." Toad came to the house the following week. He said it hadn't changed a lot and was pretty much how he remembered it. He'd come around a few times when we were kids, but my mum wouldn't have him in the house after Mushroom Gate. She said I wasn't to have anything more to do with that degenerate reprobate. I pointed out that degenerate was another word for reprobate. It was the same as calling him a thieving thief or a fucking fucker. I got a cuff around the ear for that smart-ass comment. Suppose I deserved it. She was a miserable bitch, my mum. Not sure why Dad stayed with her. All my friends' parents were divorced, even Toad's. When they split up, Toad's parents sold their house and his mum, Barbara, moved in with a guy called Bob. Bob didn't say much, just grunted and nodded. I was around there a lot. She became my surrogate mum. I liked Barbara. Not in that way, but she was kind. Always asked how I was doing and if I was courting. She was great at making small talk and made you feel really welcome. I think she tried hard with Toad's friends, as he was a bit of an oddball and didn't have many. I got the feeling she was from a well-off family, not because she asked if I was courting, but because she always laid the dining table for tea with a tablecloth, cups and saucers, a milk jug and a sugar bowl with sugar cubes and tongs. And it all matched, unlike my parents' tea set. I never held it against her, or Toad. It's all just shit luck what family you're born into. As the saying goes, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. I would have chosen her as my mum, given half a chance. Such a shame what happened to her. She didn't deserve that. Toad's dad went off and lived in a converted ambulance. Now there was an eccentric if ever I met one. Painted it purple, as I remember, with a tin of Crown Gloss paint. Strange. Nice, but strange. I heard he travelled around Europe for a bit. They found him dead by Lake Geneva. Suicide. Pills. Or hanging. Or both. Toad signed the contract and moved in 2 weeks after the first phone call. He called a few days later, asking if he could paint the living room. I said, "Okay, as long as it isn't purple." He didn't laugh. So, there he was, my first tenant. And it all went smoothly for almost 2 years. He paid the rent on time. He took care of the place, and I never got complaints from the neighbors. Then I went to Thailand for 6 months. I stayed with my cousin and helped him out with his beachside bar. Rent-free. Only had to pay for the flight. Beautiful place. Beautiful people. I loved every minute I was there. Maybe I should move there for good, especially after everything that's happened. It was while I was away that I got the first sign of trouble. Toad missed a rent payment. I emailed him. He said it was a mix-up with his bank, and he paid up the next day. The following month, it happened again. I was mightily pissed off. The mortgage, however small, had to be paid. Insurances had to be paid. Gas and electrical checks had to be paid. Life as a landlord isn't just about raking in money. We're not all loaded, and we're not all heartless. The bottom line is, Renting out properties is a business. I liked Toad as a person, but this was a financial arrangement, and he was breaking his side of the deal. I wrote to him again. This time, he didn't respond. I phoned him. The calls went to voicemail, and he never replied. I knew something was wrong. I had that feeling in my gut. I'd have to brave the British winter. Grudgingly, I cut my vacation short and booked myself on the next flight home. My gut was right. Toad wasn't there. The neighbors said they hadn't seen him in weeks. With a knot in my stomach, I let myself into the house. The place was a mess. Crap everywhere. But more than a mess. He'd taken the kitchen out. The sink was propped up with a piece of 2x4. There was a hole in the living room wall, the size of a tennis ball, all the way through to the back garden. I never did find out what that was all about. In the front room, I found a grow tent, LED lights, extractor fan and filters, the works. No plants, though. He'd probably smoked them all. If those had been the biggest problems, I would have been okay. I got someone in to replace the kitchen. While they were doing that, I asked a couple of friends, Craig and Mike, to help me clear things out. We started in the garden shed, which was filled with power tools, drills, sanders, angle grinders, lawn mowers, hedge trimmers, a couple of vacuum cleaners, a spray painting system complete with compressor, and then more drills and more angle grinders under the bench. I managed to sell 1 or 2 on eBay to recoup some of my losses. There was a bin liner full of old clothes in the cupboard under the stairs. I didn't examine them too closely because they stank. I put them straight in the bin. Maybe if I had looked at them more closely, it would have prepared me for what was to come. Next was the loft. There was a dark stain on one of the bedroom ceilings. Something had leaked up there. I pulled the ladder down, then climbed up through the hatch and shone my torch around. It took me a few seconds to process what I was seeing. The loft was rammed with boxes, mostly cardboard but some plastic, from the floor to the roof. I couldn't believe it. What the actual fuck? Big ones and small ones, rectangular, square, and even a few triangular ones. There were the boxes the power tools had come in, boxes his shoes had come in, a box his TV had come in, a box his barbecue had come in, boxes his food had come in, breakfast cereal, tea, frozen pizza, ready meals. There were even the boxes his takeaway burgers had come in. It was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it. It took us days to drag them out, break them up, and take them to the recycling center. We nearly froze our nuts off. It was like a fucking freezer up there. Then we found her, right at the back of the loft. It wasn't really her anymore, just a body. Barbara, Toad's mum. I'll never shake the image from my head. Naked, sliced from pelvis to sternum, and from one side of her belly to the other, like some mad C-section. Her staring eyes were flecked with orange, her sagging skin, grey and marbled with greenish-purple lines, lips and nipples blue and tinged with black. Her bowels had been dragged out and chucked on the boards around her. They were beginning to putrefy, and she was lying in a pool of dried blood and fluids that had seeped between the loft boards and through the lath and plaster. That's what the brown stain on the bedroom ceiling below was. I nearly barfed. Craig called the police. I was numb. I could hardly think. The police arrived, and it all turned into a blur. Question after question. More people. CID and scene of crime specialists, I think. And then they were gone. The house locked up and covered in police tape. I didn't want to go back in anyway. I put it up for sale as soon as I could. I'd had enough of being a landlord, and had the feeling it was going to be difficult to rent out a house where a murder had taken place. They arrested Toad a week later. He was living rough in Brighton. The story was all over the local press. It even made it into a few of the nationals. The headlines were horrible. Death in the attic. Council house killer. Psycho son. One implied some kind of incestuous thing between Toad and his mum, for which there was absolutely no evidence. Sick bastards, but typical of that rag. A journalist even rocked up at my flat, asking all sorts of questions. I told her to get lost. My dad had a bad experience with the media over some job he was working on in the community when he was young, so I'd been warned to give them a wide berth. "They'll twist your words any which way," he would say to me. The trial only lasted 5 days. Toad's defense team argued he was mentally ill. He was assessed by a bunch of doctors who agreed, and he was sent to a secure psychiatric unit. I visited him fairly regularly. He didn't have anyone else. Eventually, I asked him why he did it. He paused for a moment, going somewhere deep inside, and then said, as if it was the most obvious and rational thing in the world, "She completed my collection. She was the package I came in." I didn't visit much after that. I heard that Toad escaped from the unit last week. A maintenance man left the gate in the garden fence unlocked after he cut the grass. Toad just opened it and strolled out of there, cool as you like. They fired the maintenance man. Should have locked him up. Fucking idiot. I haven't heard any news of Toad since then. I hope they catch him soon. I hope he doesn't start a new collection. And I hope to God I'm not part of it.